Hello and welcome back to Gapeys Grow Room. Today we're going to be starting our onion seeds. January is the perfect time to get those started, so make sure you get some seeds going as soon as possible. I've started them as late as end of January, so you still have some time, but you want to get those started really soon. So first thing we need to talk about is the onion types, and I'm not talking about yellow onions versus red onions or bunching onions. I'm talking about long day versus short day onions. So if you haven't heard that term before, it's really important that you look into what type your onions are before you buy them, because if you don't get the right type, they will probably not grow very well for you. So I'm in Western Washington, which is in the northern part of the United States, and we require long day type onions. And if you're in the southern part, you want to look for short day onions, and if you're in the middle, you'll want the intermediate day onions. So today I've got some long day onions that I'm going to be starting. The first one is called Ailsa Craig, and I got these seeds from Baker Creek, and I've been growing this variety for probably at least 8 years. It's one of my favorites. It stores really well for one thing, and the bulbs get really big. So here are a couple of onions that I grew last year. I harvested them probably early September, and they're still very firm. I'm not seeing any sprouts coming out, so they're still looking really good. I've still got probably 2 bags full of these left to use up, and they're doing really well. So I definitely like growing that one every year. And then the other one is a new one that I'm trying this year called Patterson, and this one is a hybrid. The Ailsa Craig is an heirloom, so I sometimes grow one of each. But this is one that I've been thinking about growing for a while. It's supposed to be the longest storing onion. And it's also a yellow variety, and it gets pretty big like the Ailsa Craig as well. So it should be kind of similar. So I look forward to growing that. I got my seeds from Rayla in a seed swap with her, and she's on Instagram. Her handle is @seeds.time. So she's here local in my area as well, and I don't think she's grown these yet. And then another onion that I tried for the first time last year is called Rosa di Milano, which is a red onion. And it's actually a long to intermediate day onion. So that means you can grow it in either a long day or an intermediate day area. And I've got a couple of those here. So I've found that a lot of times red onions don't store very well, but this one is still really firm, and it got pretty large size, but I didn't have very many seeds of these because I got some in a seed swap. So I didn't have enough to grow this year. But I did find some online from a seed company, and I actually looked at several seed companies and everybody was sold out. I did finally find some seeds at Experimental Farm Networks, which I've never heard of before, but they have actually a pretty good selection of seeds. So I got that ordered today, so hopefully they'll be here in time to plant this month. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, let's get started. So the way I start onion seeds is putting a whole bunch of seeds in a small container. So these are 4-inch, or maybe 3.5-inch containers. So I normally use these ones here. These are the most popular size, but I found these little bit taller ones that are on Greenhouse Megastore. So they're the same width on top, but they're just a lot taller. So you can see the difference here. So that is a lot more room for the roots to grow. So I'm gonna be trying these ones this year, but this is what I normally try. So if you don't have these tall ones, these will work fine as well. So I've got my favorite seed starting mix, which is Jiffy. So Jiffy is the one that I use every year. It seems to work the best. I have tried other varieties or other brands of seed starting mix, but this one just works the best. And I do occasionally add a little bit of perlite to the mix because I think there's not all that much in there. So we've got our seed starting mix here, and I put it in a separate little bucket here, and I've already added some water and given it a little bit of a stir. But you want to make sure that your potting mix isn't too wet or too dry, and the way I test that is by squeezing it. So if I squeeze it and it stays together like that, then that's perfect. But if you squeeze it and water drips out, then it's too wet. So this is the perfect moisture content that we have here. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put one handful in here. And onions are pretty heavy feeders, so I like to actually add a little bit of extra fertilizer to the bottom of the container because seed starting mix doesn't really have much nutrients in it. So I'm going to be using, this is actually IV Organics fertilizer, and this is one I just started using last year, mainly for my figs, but I found it works really well for other things as well. So it comes with this little handy scoop. So I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of fertilizer, and you can use any kind of fertilizer, but I recommend something that's a little bit slow release. All right, and then we're going to add some more mix here. And I'll also use some liquid fertilizer while it's growing as well. All right, so we're looking pretty good there. So you just want to lightly tap it down. You don't want to push it down too hard. All right, so let's start with our Patterson seeds. So let's see, last year I actually put 64 seeds in one of these containers, and it stayed in this container until I transplanted them in, I think it was the end of April. But that was a little bit too crowded, I think. It did fine in the end, but I'm gonna give them a little bit more room, and we'll do 7 by 7, which is 49. So I'm gonna do, just kind of space them out evenly. 7 rows this way and 7 across that way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Just want to make sure to evenly space these out. So I like to go 1 row that way, and then I'll go 1 row this way, and then I'll fill it in. All right, so we've got 49 seeds in here, and now I'm just going to cover the top with some more potting mix, or seed starting mix. So evenly spread that out. So the next thing I like to do is just spritz the top with some water. Then we're gonna add a piece of plastic wrap to the top to keep the moisture in. And I'm gonna go ahead and set this on a heat mat set to 70 degrees, and that will help it germinate much quicker. So it's not required, but it will go much quicker if you do. So you can see I've already got a few things growing here. I've got some arugula, Casper kale, and I've got a few different varieties of spinach. So these just germinated in the last couple of days, and I've got these here on the heat mat. So you can see a heat mat here, and I'll post a link to some of this equipment in the description of this video, so you can check that out. And we've got our saran wrap over here. This variety hasn't germinated yet, so I'm keeping that covered to keep in the moisture. And then for lights, I'm using these T8 shop lights, and I find this works best for new seedlings. And once they get a little bit bigger, then I may transfer them under some LED lights, but they're perfectly fine here under T8 lights. So normally onion seeds start germinating within a week or so, so we'll check back in a week and see how they're doing. So it should take about 7 days for us to see the seeds germinate under ideal conditions, and we've got it on a heat mat here set to 70 degrees, so it shouldn't take too much longer than that. If you don't have a heat mat, it could take probably up to 2 weeks, so I just like to speed things up a little bit by using the heat mat, and I've already got my heat mat on for my other seedlings, so it just made sense. So they don't actually need any light to germinate, so you don't need any lights when you're germinating your onion seeds. I've actually got the onions behind the light, so they're not under it at all. But as soon as we start seeing them germinate, we're gonna wanna move them under the lights and remove that saran wrap. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the Ailsa Craig seed started, and we'll check back again in a few days and see how we're doing. Look at that, the onions are right on time. They started sprouting at exactly 7 days. So that's the Patterson onions there, which are a little further along than the Ailsa Craig, but we've got some Ailsa Craig sprouts coming up too. So like I said before, these are gonna stay in these containers until they get transplanted outside in probably March or April. And I will be feeding these some liquid fertilizer, a week solution, starting probably when they start getting about a couple inches tall. And then once they get about 4 inches tall, I will be trimming them back to about 2 inches or so, and just keep them trimmed until I get them transplanted. Here's the onions 3 days after germination, and look at how much they've grown. This is the Patterson hybrid onions, and then we've got the Ailsa Craig heirloom onions here, and they're a little bit further behind than the others, but they're both are doing really well. And I did want to mention that I did go ahead and remove the heat mat that was under here. I really only use that for germination. They're pretty cold hardy, so they don't really need it, but they're doing pretty good without it. And I'll go ahead and put a couple of links in the description of this video for some onion growing videos I've done in the past that might help you out. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll be sure to answer those. Thanks again for watching. We'll talk to you again soon. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. You can also find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.